Why Meghan?
Well, because she posed a challenge to the royal family, and she's a fascinating person. I mean, she's a person who started from nothing and has become a world global star, and that route to the top has never really been properly reported and examined and investigated. In the trailer, there had 27,000 comments. 95% of them were negative. So they already knew there was a problem of the image. There was also the Vanity Fair article, which is, American Hustle was a huge blow.
We love it. We love to see it.
To Meghan. So it was opportune. And of course, by then she also knew that her brand was in great trouble. Well, he does it because he needs a profile. That's the only way they can get money, by showing the profile. And for Netflix, everything is built around the future documentary series to promote the Sussexes. Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Right.
The Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem.
There is a specific kind of silence that screams louder than any headline. And right now that silence is surrounding Montecito. If you look at the track record of the Duchess of Sussex, you see a woman who does not hesitate to call the lawyers. She has taken on the biggest newspapers in Britain, photo agencies, and publishers. Legal action has been her primary weapon, a way to draw lines in the sand and control the narrative. But there is one name that stands out in this history, not because of a court battle, but because of the absolute lack of one. Tom Bower. When Bower released his book Revenge, the world held its breath expecting the usual cease and desist letters and high-profile filings. But they never came. No writ, no injunction, no judge. Just a very calculated, very heavy silence. Why would a woman who fights over private letters and paparazzi shots ignore a book that dissects her entire rise to power, her relationships, and her alleged treatment of staff? The answer isn't that she's taking the high road. The answer is much darker and far more strategic. It turns out there is a massive difference between suing because you're offended and suing because something is false. And Meghan knows that stepping into a courtroom with Tom Bower wouldn't just be a legal battle, it would be the end of the brand she has spent years building. To understand why this specific silence is so damning, you have to look at the pattern. Meghan Markle does not shy away from conflict. Historically, she invites it when she feels she has the upper hand. She has sued when the argument was narrow copyright infringement, technical breaches of privacy, procedural errors. These are safe bets. They are cases where the argument is about what was published, not who she is. It's a way to look strong without risking exposure. But Tom Bower represents a completely different beast. He isn't a tabloid editor looking for a quick click. He is a forensic biographer who treats his subjects like crime scenes. When Revenge hit the shelves, it didn't just throw insults, it documented a timeline. It laid out a specific arc of behavior, the intense charm used to gain access, the ruthless cutting off of people once they were no longer useful, and the alleged mistreatment of those who stood in her way. These weren't vague rumors. They were detailed accounts from different people in different places, spanning different years. If the contents of the book were truly defamatory lies, this would be the easiest payday of Meghan's life. A defamation win would vindicate her, destroy Bower's credibility, and silence her critics forever. Yet she does nothing. The media noticed, the public noticed, and slowly the realization set in she isn't ignoring him because he's irrelevant. She's avoiding him because he's dangerous. But the danger isn't just in the book itself, it's in what would happen the moment she signed her name on a lawsuit. Most people misunderstand how Tom Bower works, and that's why they misunderstand Meghan's fear. He doesn't rely on emotional language or hysterical claims. He builds his books on what lawyers call corroborated patterns. In Revenge, he didn't just find one angry person to say something nasty. He found staff members, former friends, industry contacts, and royal aides who all independently of one another described the exact same behavior. When you have a production assistant in Toronto describing the same switch in personality as a royal aide in London, you no longer have a rumor. You have a pattern. And in a court of law, a pattern is incredibly difficult to disprove. Bower's book paints a picture of a woman who is not the victim of a cruel system, but a master manipulator of it. He details how she allegedly sought out freebies, demanded payments where none were allowed, and treated relationships as transactional stepping stones. He writes about the hard-nut exterior that lies beneath the humanitarian smile. The silence from the Sussex camp regarding these specific claims is deafening because Bauer didn't write them as opinions. He wrote them as historical record. He effectively dared her to challenge him. The strategy was clear: if you say I'm lying, prove it. And that is where the trap snaps shut. To prove him wrong, she would have to provide evidence. And as we've seen, evidence has a funny way of contradicting the truth we were told in glossy interviews. But even that isn't the biggest threat. The real nightmare has a name, and it's a legal term that keeps celebrities awake at night. If Meghan were to sue Tom Bauer for defamation, the legal process would immediately trigger a phase called discovery. This is not optional. It is the price of admission to a courtroom. Discovery means that both sides have to hand over relevant documents, emails, text messages, and communication logs to the opposition. Think about what that means for the Sussexes. We are talking about private texts sent to PR teams, emails to agents, messages to friends who have since been cut off, and internal communications about how to handle the royal family. It would all be on the table. Bauer wouldn't just be defending his book, his lawyers would be tearing apart Meghan's digital life. They would be looking for the contradictions. Remember the Oprah interview. Remember the claims about not knowing who Harry was, or the confusion about royal protocol discovery would expose the reality behind those statements. It would reveal the level of calculation that went into finding freedom. We've already seen a glimpse of this in previous court cases where she had to apologize to the court for forgetting she had briefed the authors of Finding Freedom. That was a minor slip-up. A full defamation trial against Bauer would be an avalanche. It would expose the machinery behind the brand, the orchestration of paparazzi shots, the coordination of leaks, and the specific instructions given to friends on what to say to the media. Meghan knows that winning a defamation case might technically be possible, but the collateral damage from the documents released during discovery would destroy her credibility forever. It's a risk no smart lawyer would ever let her take. There is another more human element that makes a lawsuit impossible to people. Bauer's book relies heavily on sources who spoke to him often anonymously or off the record because they were terrified. They feared the social backlash, the Markle sparkle turning into a cancel campaign or professional retaliation. But a courtroom changes the rules of engagement. If Meghan sued, Bauer could be compelled to identify his sources to prove his due diligence. And once those names are known, the court could subpoena them to testify. Imagine the scene: former palace staff, old friends from her acting days, and industry professionals all placed under oath and asked to tell the truth about their experiences with the Duchess. These people who have stayed silent out of fear or professionalism would suddenly have legal protection and a legal obligation to speak. It would be a parade of testimony confirming the very bullying and difficult behavior Meghan has spent years denying. It would validate the Duchess difficult narrative in a way no tabloid ever could. Bauer has hinted repeatedly that many people spoke to him but refused to go on the record for the book. In a trial, those safeguards vanish. The silence she has enforced through non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and social pressure would be broken by the gavel. It's the ultimate irony: by suing to protect her reputation, she would be creating the platform for its total dismantling. Beyond the legal mechanics, there is a fundamental narrative problem. Bauer's book did something very specific. It stripped Meghan of the victim cloak. For years, her brand has relied on the idea that she was a naive outsider, bullied by the press and unsupported by the institution. Bauer turned that upside down. He portrayed her as the ultimate operator, strategic, commercially aware, and highly intentional about her status. He documented a woman who started from nothing and ruthlessly climbed to the top, using every connection and every opportunity with precision. Here is the problem. You can't sue someone for calling you smart, ambitious, and successful, even if they make it sound cold. Bauer's argument isn't that she is a failure, it's that she is a success, but a success built on casualties. He describes a woman who targeted the royal family as a career move, who understood the value of the brand better than the Windsors themselves. This framing is legally bulletproof because it fits the facts. She did become a global icon. She did sign massive deals. She did dominate the news cycle. Bauer simply argues that this was the plan all along. If she takes him to court, she has to argue that she wasn't smart, that she wasn't strategic, that she stumbled into everything by accident. And that is an argument that makes her look weak and incompetent. Bauer trapped her in a corner where her only defense is to admit she had no agency, which contradicts her entire feminist power brand. It's a rhetorical checkmate. So if she can't sue, what does she do? She engages in the theater of law. We have seen this pattern repeatedly vague briefings to friendly media outlets suggesting that legal options are being explored, or that the couple is shocked and appalled and considering action. This is a PR tactic, not a legal one. It's designed to do three things: intimidate smaller critics, reassure her fan base that she fights back, and buy time for the news cycle to move on. It's a bluff. When Revenge was published, there were whispers of lawsuits. There were hints that the lawyers were looking at it line by line. But that's all they were, whispers. This threat without action is actually a sign of weakness. In the media world, timing is credibility. If you are defamed, you sue immediately. You don't wait 6 months. You don't wait 2 years. The longer she waits, the more she validates Bauer's work. The media has realized that the Sussex legal threats are paper tigers when it comes to investigative journalism. They work on tabloids that print gossip. They don't work on biographers who print receipts. This has shifted the power dynamic. Journalists who used to be terrified of a Sussex lawsuit are now seeing that Bauer survived unscathed. It empowers others to dig deeper, to ask harder questions, and to stop accepting the sanitized version of events. The shield of invincibility has cracked. But perhaps the most terrifying reason for the silence is what wasn't in the book. Tom Bauer has been in this game for a long time. He knows that when you write an expose on a litigious figure, you keep your best ammunition in reserve. He has hinted in interviews that there were stories he didn't include, not because they weren't true, but because he wanted to save them for the defense. This is a common tactic among investigative writers. You publish the damaging truth, but you keep the nuclear truth in your back pocket just in case they decide to sue. If Meghan drags this into court, she isn't just fighting what's on page 200 of Revenge. She is fighting the files in Bauer's office that we haven't seen yet. She is fighting the recordings, the extra emails, the witness statements that were deemed too sensitive for publication but would be perfectly admissible in a trial. Bauer is effectively holding a loaded gun, and he's waiting for her to make a move. He is confident because he knows what he left out. And deep down, Meghan knows it too. She knows exactly which skeletons are still in the closet, and she knows Bauer has the key. The silence isn't forgiveness, it's containment. She is betting that if she ignores him, the world will eventually forget. But the problem with books like Revenge is that they don't disappear. They sit on shelves, they are cited as history, and they become the reference point for everyone else. The story of Meghan Markle and Tom Bauer is not really about a book. It's about the limits of control. For her entire career, Meghan has operated on the premise that she can curate her reality, cut out the dissenting voices, and sue the ones that remain. But in Tom Bauer, she met an opponent who operates outside that framework. He doesn't care about access, he doesn't need her approval, and he isn't afraid of her lawyers. He documented a version of the truth that is backed by evidence, and he dared her to challenge it. Her refusal to do so is the ultimate admission that the version of events presented in Revenge, the calculation, the ambition, the trail of discarded friends, is closer to the truth than the fairy tale she sold to the world. She is stuck in a trap of her own making. To fight for her reputation in court would be to destroy it completely. So she stays silent, she lets the rumors swirl, and she hopes that we stop asking questions. But as long as that book remains unchallenged, the question hangs over Montecito like a dark cloud. If it's all lies, why not prove it? The answer, it seems, is that she can't. And that is a story that no Netflix documentary can edit away.